Well, with the release of Dark Phoenix, we now have 12 movies in the 20th Century Fox Marvel Universe, the X-Men universe, and depending on what the hell they decide to do with this New Mutants movie, this might be the last film we ever get from the 20th Century Fox version of X-Men before it goes over to the MCU or whatever Disney decides to do with it. But 12 films in this franchise to talk about, 12 films to rank, a lot of different passionate views on this franchise, so I can tell you right now, my list is not going to look like your list. There's going to be a couple things in here that might be controversial. Comes with the territory with the Cody Leach ranking of every single franchise I've ever done. There's always something that somebody gets pissed off about. But whatever, this is my opinion. Post yours down in the comments below and we can discuss your rankings. So, starting off with the bottom of the barrel, the worst X-Men film, number 12 is still X-Men Origins Wolverine. And this is honestly the only movie in this entire franchise that I do think is just flat out trash. Like, everything from here up is either mediocre to somewhat troubled to good to great to fantastic. Like, this is the only movie out of the 12 that I think is just a train wreck from start to finish. Not to say that there isn't good things about it. Hugh Jackman is just as good in the role as he's always been in every single time we've seen him as Wolverine. You always see the passion with this guy, how much he actually pushes himself both physically and just emotionally to deliver this character. I liked Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth. There's a couple of decent action scenes here and there, but the story was rough. You could tell the directing was just all over the place with a lot of studio meddling. CGI was atrocious. When Wolverine's claws look like a 90s cartoon, you got a gigantic problem. They shoehorned a lot of different characters in there, like the Blob. I didn't think Gambit was too bad. I don't really know what his place was in this movie other than, hey, it's Gambit. And the big thing is the Wade Wilson Deadpool thing that everybody usually latches onto when they talk about this movie, taking the merc with the mouth and taking his mouth away. A lot of very bizarre, maddening decisions made with this movie. Could have been a great origin, and even just the origin itself, like aside from the history, like, you know, montage and the opening of the film, which was really cool, the answers they provide to the questions that we had about Wolverine's origins are just not that satisfying. The mystery is much more satisfying than the origin, so I pretty much discount this film completely. I could watch it as like a so bad that it's good thing, but other than that, bottom of the barrel, number 12, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Well, time to kick off the controversy. I guarantee this pick is going to have a lot of people in agreement and a lot of people in disagreement, but I gotta be honest, number 11 for me, as of right now, is the new film Dark Phoenix. And this is one that, like I said in my review, this is not a bad film. It is just as average and bland and mediocre as you can possibly get. So from here on out, these are all films that I would at least recommend a watch to. But Dark Phoenix, God, especially as a closing chapter to this X-Men franchise, just a huge disappointment all around. Sophie Turner was great. Other than that, everything else is just bland to not interesting. Like, even Eric and Charles aren't really that likable or as captivating in this movie as they've been in the past 3 films. All the other, like, new versions of the X-Men, like Cyclops and Nightcrawler, kind of just get pushed to the background of the story, and they get like maybe a moment in an action scene to kind of shine. There's really only one scene that really stands out through the whole film, and it's a train sequence that was actually a full-on reshoot, so I have no idea what the original ending was. Maybe a little bit better of an execution of the Dark Phoenix side of things, just because you do focus on Jean Grey a lot more than you did in The Last Stand. But since this is below The Last Stand, obviously I will get into reasons why I think that movie overall is a little more satisfying. But Dark Phoenix, just a disappointment. It's an okay X-Men movie, but that's about as far as my emotions go with this film. It's like a flat line all the way across. Number 11 is Dark Phoenix. Just edging out Dark Phoenix is X3 The Last Stand. Now, this movie was really disappointing when I first saw it in theaters, coming off of how much I loved the first 2 X-Men films. We all know that Bryan Singer left the project to go do Superman Returns, probably not the best decision, and we got Bryan Singer as, or not Bryan Singer, we got Brett Ratner as the director of X3. And you know what? I rewatched this movie yesterday after watching Dark Phoenix, and after a lot of time has passed, I can say that this movie does have a lot more redeeming qualities than people give it credit for. It's still not a great X-Men film. It's still very disappointing. It still drops the ball, and a lot of things that were set up perfectly in the first two X-Men films to a laughable degree. But there's a lot of really good moments in this film. Like the whole thing with Wolverine and his struggle with Jean Grey and the ultimate sacrifice that he has to make to, you know, basically kill the love of his life to save everybody else. Beast is awesome. There's some really great action sequences. One opens up the film like this digital version of if Sentinels are attacking. The whole fight with Ellis Island, the whole scene where Magneto lifts the Golden Gate Bridge, not Ellis Island, Alcatraz. The whole thing with he lifts the Golden Gate Bridge is awesome. There's some great character moments in there. There's some really funny lines. But on the negative side, the Dark Phoenix saga kind of got botched. It got shoved to like a side story when it shouldn't have been. The whole Cure thing was an interesting idea that they didn't really explore enough. It just kind of moved the plot forward. Angel felt like a total throwaway character, like he was just here just because we need a new X-Men. Didn't really feel like he had a place in the movie at all. The whole rivalry between Iceman and Pyro kind of fell on its face. Didn't really go anywhere exciting. The deaths of certain characters, especially Cyclops, is just basically brushed off like he was never an important character, and that's just infuriating to watch. And I ultimately wasn't even really satisfied with the ultimate fates of Charles Xavier and Magneto, which both got reversed eventually in Days of Future Past, but just as an ending for that trilogy, not really anything that was overall satisfying. But with a lot of time passed, with those scars kind of healing with how disappointing this was upon release, I still think this movie has a lot of entertainment value to be had. It's still got some fun moments, and overall, it's a movie that I think is a decent enough X-Men movie and just edges out Dark Phoenix. Number 9 is going to be X-Men Apocalypse. Now, this was a gigantic step down from how great of a return to form Days of Future Past was for the Bryan Singer characters of X-Men. You get to X-Men Apocalypse, it's now kind of transitioned back into the first class of characters. It's gotten past the Days of Future Past storyline. You're introducing Apocalypse, who is basically the biggest villain the X-Men ever go against, the first mutant, the most powerful mutant. And the movie never really feels that epic. On the positive side, I loved all the casting of all of the younger characters like Nightcrawler, especially Jean Grey. I loved Sophie Turner in that role, and she was the best part of Dark Phoenix. I liked Ty Sheridan as Scott Summers. All of the younger kids I thought was a really good addition to the cast. I thought that Charles Xavier and Eric was great, especially the whole Magneto thing with his family and that ultimate tragedy was awesome. There's scenes where like Apocalypse is gathering the Four Horsemen, like the Metallica scene when he's making Archangel is pretty cool, but overall the third act just kind of devolves into world dominator, generic villain, people floating around like Magneto in a bunch of dust. Mystique gets, again, way too much focus in this movie. She's never been that interesting of a character. Just because you have Jennifer Lawrence does not mean that it needs to be Jennifer Lawrence's movie. A lot of frustrations with this film. But like X-Men The Last Stand, I do think that overall it is an entertaining movie, and there is a lot more redeeming factors with this film than most people get it credit for. So I still enjoy X-Men Apocalypse, just an ultimate disappointment that this is the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and this is what we got. Okay, fine, moving on. Now from here on out, these are all movies that I pretty much enjoy flat out. These are movies that I think are good to great to fantastic all the way up. And number 8 is The Wolverine, the second Wolverine standalone film where he goes to Japan and he loses his healing ability for a little while. I really enjoy this movie. I think that it's one of the best performances that Hugh Jackman has given as Wolverine, except for one you're going to see much higher on this list. I think the action sequences, like with the ninjas and everything, are awesome, especially if you watch the uncut version of this film. There's a very rated R bloody scene whenever he's running and all the ninjas are putting like arrows in him, and he's got like a machine that's grinding up people and shooting out blood everywhere. It is an awesome scene, and I just think that overall the story and the journey you go on with Wolverine, this guy who's kind of left and just wandered the earth as a loner and has all this baggage from the death of Jean Grey, I thought it was awesome pretty much all the way through. But I do agree with basically the biggest complaint that everybody has, which is the way that it goes from that awesome stuff to generic villain in the third act, and he's fighting the big like Silver Samurai Transformers looking robot. I still don't hate the third act as much as most people, which is why it's higher on this list than most people's probably, but it is a big devolve from the first two acts to that third act. But overall, I still think this is a damn good Wolverine film and a huge, huge improvement from X-Men Origins Wolverine. So number 8 is The Wolverine. Number 7, it pains me to put this movie so low, but like I said, basically from here on out are movies that I all like to love, and this just fell short for me, unfortunately, and that's Deadpool Deadpool 2. Now, I still really like this movie. I still really like the storyline. I like the addition of kind of him having to take care of this kid to make up for this big death that happens in the first act of the movie. I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't seen it yet. I thought Cable was kind of a cool addition, but he didn't quite fit with the movie as far as I'm concerned. He was a little bit too grizzled and a little too serious. I think it could have had a little bit more fun with that character, but then again, I haven't read the comic books. Maybe that's the way that it is, but I like Josh Brolin in the role. It just felt like a little bit of combating tones, but there is laugh out loud sequence over and over and over again throughout this movie. The opening is great. You have the whole sequence where he has like this generic version of X-Force and they jump out of the plane and some of them don't survive. I'll just say that. That whole sequence is gut-busting laughing. Great action scenes yet again. Ryan Reynolds just kills it in the role of Deadpool. I really like Domino as an addition. She's probably my favorite new character with Deadpool 2. And I think it just does a good job at kind of advancing the story a bit, advancing that relationship between him and his girlfriend. And I think that especially the post-credit scene where it kind of leaves everything for Deadpool 3 was just pure brilliance. So I still really enjoyed Deadpool 2. Ultimately, it was just very disappointing for me because of how much I loved the first film. This just didn't quite measure up to that. So Deadpool 2 is going to be sitting right here comfortable at number 7. Number 6, this is probably the other big controversial pick that I have because there's a lot of people that really, really love this film. And I really like it, just not as much as everybody else. That is First Class. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that the acting performances and the portrayals of Charles Xavier and Magneto, especially in this film, are brilliant. They are awesome. They are perfection by both of those actors. I love the expansion of the origin story we got in the first X-Men with Eric Lenscher. I thought that Kevin Bacon was an awesome villain, not just a good villain, an awesome villain. I like some of the First Class characters very much. They were kind of fun to be around. There's some really cool action sequences. I love the sequence where he pulls the submarine out of the water from the plane. Awesome stuff. Where this movie gets devolved down to number 6 for me is something that is just a pet peeve of mine. That is not a pet peeve for many people, so I understand if you absolutely love this film and are baffled that it's this low. But I'm not a big fan of prequels because I cannot stand when prequels have so many like wink and nod moments to the previous movies. And this movie is riddled with them. It's like every 15 minutes there's some kind of a wink to the audience with some kind of a collection of words that calls back to the first couple of movies. And really, unless I'm forgetting one, none of them really land for me. They all like stop the movie on a dime and they make me cringe. Like the one where Jennifer Lawrence is sitting there and Professor X and Magneto come out and she's like, hey, we were discussing names. We decided that you should be Professor X and you should be Magneto. And it's like, that's how they got their names? That is so on the nose, that's annoying. And then the scene at the end with Myra McTaggart where she's like, you're not G-Men, you're X-Men. That, like I said, pet peeve of mine. I understand if you see that, you kind of enjoy the little wink and nod moment or it doesn't bother you at all. Totally get it. For me, it aggravates the piss out of me. So it's moments like that and a couple of other small details in the film, like the January Jones character and stuff like that, that just kind of devolves it a little bit. But again, 6 on up, these are movies that I think are fantastic. So number 6 is not throwing shade at this movie whatsoever. Number 6 is First Class. Number 5, the one that started it all, the original X-Men. I still have fond memories of going to see this in the theater with my cousin Kyle. This was like the big premiere superhero movie. X-Men and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man were like the ones that started it all. And this is just a great movie, start to finish. Has it aged a little bit? Sure. In comparison to how great comic book movies are now, it might look a little lackluster in certain aspects, but if you just appreciate it for what this movie did back when it came out in 2000, it's just a great film. They casted all the characters perfectly, especially Wolverine and Charles Xavier and Magneto. Like the two castings of Magneto and Charles Xavier is just something that they've nailed perfectly twice. That's amazing. I love Cyclops and even Halle Berry as Storm and Jean Grey. I love the different origins and the different explanations we get for who these characters are. Kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, where you don't need an origin story for every single character. You just kind of get introduced to the group and that group dynamic is just there firing on all cylinders from the beginning. I love the storyline involving like this mystery of what Magneto's ultimate goal is with this girl Rogue. This is great action sequences. Like I love the fight with Sabretooth and Wolverine. I love the bar fight, especially with Wolverine when you're first introduced to him. There's just so many great moments in this movie that, yes, a lot of it is nostalgia. I will admit that fully, but it's a movie that I will always rewatch and always enjoy. So number 5, X-Men. Top 4. Now, I love the MCU, I love some of the DC movies, but I will tell you, these top 4 are all like in my top 10 or 15 comic book films of all time. I think that these top 4 are fantastic, top level comic book films. And number 4, kicking off this awesome list, is X-Men Days of Future Past. A huge return to form, a huge event film. This thing was so exciting when it was getting put together, having this great cast of the first class characters and the already proven great cast of the Bryan Singer X-Men in the first 3 films coming together to tell this epic tale across the timelines, with Sentinels and Wolverine kind of being the pendulum that swings it both ways. Awesome, awesome movie. I love time travel movies. I love the futuristic, desolate world where the Sentinels are wiping out mutants and they have to go back to the past to stop the creation. I love having Wolverine as the focus yet again, but being able to focus much more on 2 different sides of the cast. So it just feels like a very well-rounded, packed out movie with great characters. I actually like Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique in this movie. This is her best performance as Mystique as far as I'm concerned, because she's actually Mystique in this. She's not Jennifer Lawrence walking around. She's actually Mystique. She actually acts like Rebecca Romijn's version of Mystique, and it fits into the story why you would have her as a focus, so I'm cool with that. Ultimate with like the way that they end it in the end with kind of erasing some of the mistakes of previous movies, I thought was a great way to end it, and it was kind of like a funny middle finger from Bryan Singer for like, I left this franchise in your hands and you dicked it up this bad, okay, let me fix everything with this little ending. Straight across the board, like the Quicksilver sequence, there's so many things about this film that is just awesome. One of the best comic book films of all time. Very little negative to say about it. Just above this are films that I think are even better. So hard to top it, but 3 topped it. Number 4, Days of Future Past. Number 3 is a film that for a long time I held as the greatest comic book film ever made, and that is X2 X-Men United. This is how you do a sequel. It takes everything that was great and epic and awesome and enjoyable about the first film and cranked all of it up to 11. The character moments are better, the story is deeper, the action sequences are bigger, the character rivalries are stronger, you get a lot of different side plots, like with the whole thing with Stryker and Wolverine's origin, the brewing war between Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants and the X-Men and his big escape from the plastic prison, which is one of the awesome sequences that this movie has. The whole thing with the Dark Phoenix storyline starting to brew in Jean Grey with powers that she doesn't quite know what's going on. How everything wraps all those 3 stories up together all at once. Pure awesome. This movie, I really don't have anything negative to say about it. I don't even think it's aged that poorly. It still is a kick-ass comic book film. Totally a standard for what you would do with a comic book sequel till this day. So X2 X-Men United, hell yeah, number 3. Now we are at our top 2, and both of these films are probably in my top 5 comic book films of all time. I love them that much. That's how high of a regard I hold for these 2. And number 2 is the original Deadpool. This is a film that I had been waiting for ever since X-Men Origins Wolverine screwed up Deadpool, and I saw Ryan Reynolds and the potential of what could be there. And God bless Ryan Reynolds for fighting tooth and nail for like 7 or 8 years to get this movie made, because God, this was like a precious gift from God when it finally was unveiled. I fought tooth and nail to get to go see this the weekend. It was just one of those weekends from hell where everything was going wrong. Finally got to go to this theater to see this with Holly, and we loved it start to finish. Was laughing the entire time. The action sequences are kick-ass. Ryan Reynolds squeezes every little bit of juice out of this role that he possibly can and nails it all the way through. I love the little bit of storyline that we get in this involving him and his girlfriend and kind of the origins of trying to get back at the guy that made him Deadpool. All of the different side characters. Everything about this film is just flawless action comedy to me. Some of the best and most creative and enjoyable filmmaking that I've seen from Tim Miller, which gives me a lot of faith, hopefully, for the new Terminator film. Hopefully he brings all of that magic over to this, but just an awesome movie, an awesome comedy, an awesome action movie, and one kick-ass comic book film from the Fox X-Men franchise. So Deadpool is number 2. And that leads us to number 1, the best movie that this franchise has ever given us, and what probably should have been the final movie that this franchise has ever given us to end on such a phenomenal final note, and that is James Mangold's Logan. Holy hell, I was not ready for how good this movie was going to be. I thought it was going to be cool because it had an R rating, and it was going to be more like Wolverine unleashed and getting to see him in a way we've never got to see him before. The trailers look brilliant. You got the return of Charles Xavier. It looked like a Western in some spots. Was not ready for how unbelievable this movie was. By far the best performance that Hugh Jackman has ever given as Logan and Wolverine. I love the storyline where he's like starting to actually be poisoned a bit by the adamantium, and it's making his healing power start to be a little bit slow. He's grizzled. There's some huge tragic event that happened with the X-Men that he's kind of out in hiding with Charles Xavier. Still probably one of the best performances that Patrick Stewart has ever given in his entire career in this movie. Absolute fucking shame that he did not get a nomination at least for best supporting actor for this. And he probably should have won too. There's great action sequences, bloody as hell action sequences. The whole storyline with him trying to protect and understand this little girl, X-23, who's basically his daughter, and the way that that story wraps up with the ultimate fate of Wolverine. Even the villains in this are utilized very, very well. The side characters are utilized very, very well. From start to finish, this is just a flawless film. I even like the whole segment of this film involving X-24, which is the only real thing that I've heard quite a few fans gripe about, is the way that that whole storyline played out, but it shocked me the way that that played out as well. So this is one of my favorite comic book films of all time. It's by far, even as much as I love Deadpool and the movies that are just below it, by far the best thing that this franchise has ever given, and just a slam bang perfection ending to the character of Wolverine and the portrayal by Hugh Jackman. Going down in history, in my opinion, as like the greatest portrayal of a comic book character, what he's done since 2000 all the way up to Logan. There's huge shoes to fill for whoever takes this role in the future. So Logan, #1. So what do you guys think of the X-Men franchise? What is your ranking? Like I said, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with mine, and that's fine. This is a lot of great movies in this franchise, so there's going to be a lot of passionate views swinging all over the place. Put your passionate views down in the comment section. Give me your ranking. Give me some reasons why you rank it that way, so it's a little more interesting to read than just numbers, and we will discuss the X-Men franchise as it stands now with these 12 films. Possibly 13 in the future. Who the fuck knows what's going on with the New Mutants? But let me know down in the comments below what your ranking of the X-Men franchise is, and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you guys want to check out some social media links, check the video description below for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for Cody Leach merchandise, other stuff like t-shirts, coffee mugs, mesh bags, a lot of cool designs you guys will like, especially if you're a Child's Play fan. New Child's Play coming out. And my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, including X-Men reviews, past rankings of Marvel films, stuff like that, you can check all that out by clicking right over here.